So Terence Crawford went public a few days ago to give his side of the story regarding why the fight with Errol Spence didn't happen. And he pretty much blames it on a lack of transparency on Al Haymon's behalf. Now, he starts off by saying that Al Haymon's a good dude, for whatever that's worth, but he proceeds to talk about how the contract was very one-sided. Despite that, he agreed to most of the unfavorable terms from his perspective in the contract, such as getting the short end of the stick in terms of the purse split and not getting a guarantee, so no minimum amount of money, etc., etc. But the sticking point, according to him, was the lack of transparency regarding who's getting what in the show. You know, what percentage is Haymon getting, what percentage is Spence getting, the network, all this kind of thing. Because he wanted to see where his deal fits in the big picture of the show overall, the financials of the show, before proceeding. And that was not forthcoming. He then said, and remember, he's not only talking to Al Haymon, he's also, according to him, talking to Errol Spence on the phone. So he's directly corresponding with these people. And he said that he had two hedge fund companies who were willing to pay him and Errol Spence $25 million each for the fight. And he went to Al Haymon with this. I think he said he approached Errol Spence first, and Spence said, you got to talk to Al. And so Terence Crawford went and talked to Al Haymon, and Haymon said, I'm not letting anybody else touch this fight. So that was that. And Terence Crawford apparently has got some big deal for the fight with David Avanesian, where he's going to get paid loads of money for that. We'll see how that goes, whether he actually sees the money, because there are lots of people who come into boxing talking about how they can pay this and pay that. But in the end, a lot of times people don't get paid. I mean, look at the controversy regarding Triller and people claiming they haven't been paid by them. So who knows whether Terence Crawford is actually going to get paid. What they say they're going to pay him for the Avanesian fight, that remains to be seen. Now, obviously, you've got the likes of Oscar De La Hoya coming out, jumping on this, saying, well, you see, I've been dealing with this kind of stuff with Al Haymon for years. Thank you, Terence Crawford, for exposing the truth. This is the tweet he put out. My respects to Terence Crawford in exposing the Al Haymon circus. I've been dealing with this for years. I promoted all the PBC fighters, and it's the same with all of them. They are not in charge. I'll be going live soon to elaborate and expose the truth. Now, Oscar De La Hoya might be telling the truth here, but at the same time, he's not exactly neutral, is he? Because one, he's a rival promoter to PBC, and two, Al Haymon ran away with all his fighters, or most of his fighters, back in the day. So there could very well be an element of bitterness there. But again, just because he's bitter and just because Al Haymon did run away with most of his fighters, that doesn't mean that what he's saying isn't true. Certainly we've seen over the past couple years that Eddie Hearn, for example, has found a lot of difficulty in making fights with certain PBC guys. Even Bob Arum has talked about some difficulty dealing with Al Haymon from time to time. So, and I've said before, PBC is almost cult-like in the way they operate. I've got no issue with Al Haymon never doing interviews and stuff like that. Maybe it's for the best. But I do have an issue with, you know, this propensity, this tendency. Maybe it's even a policy. Let me not even call it a tendency. Maybe it's a policy or an unofficial policy to have as many in-house fights as possible. Now, I'm aware that most promoters do this to some extent, but it seems like PBC are the worst for it when it comes to, we're just not going to make certain big fights unless this guy crosses the street. And that was always the case with Terence Crawford. That's what he was always met with when he was trying to make a fight with Errol Spence. Oh, you got to cross the street. You got to cross the street. And now that he's a free agent and he's talking to Errol Spence, and Spence, of course, claims he's a free agent, or that's pretty laughable. He has to go and check everything with Al Haymon first before he can do anything. Al Haymon's acting like his boss. So Terence Crawford, of course, raises that in this video and says, you're not your own boss. Stop capping and pretending. You have to go through Al, you know, whenever you want to do anything. So, yeah, the PBC setup is frustrating, as a boxing fan who just wants to see the best fights. And obviously you have these cult members, and I'm not just talking about fighters and people that work for PBC, but the fans of many of the PBC fighters have a cult-like mentality where they are apologists for all the roadblocks, all the obstacles that PBC put in the way of certain fights happening. I mean, it is just to this day, and I'm using this phrase here, to this day, it is totally bizarre that Deontay Wilder turned down that DAZN deal. And again, he was supposed to be his own man, right? A free agent. He turned down over $100 million. I mean, that's crazy. That is totally crazy. Obviously, Wilder's not that bright, and he had little gray alien Shelley Finkel whispering in his ear saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that. $100 million? Crazy. You know, it's not like the Terence Crawford situation where Wilder was getting no guarantee, where Wilder was getting a tiny bit. No, Wilder was going to get paid $100 million. So way better than the deal Terence Crawford was offered by Al Haymon. But at the end of the day, if Terence Crawford really wants this fight to happen, he is going to have to make concessions. I don't know whether there was a rematch clause, maybe two-way rematch clause in a contract. If he really wants it to happen for legacy, unfortunately, he's either going to have to sign with PBC or just take this deal where he gets completely railroaded. I don't see any other way the fight can happen. I don't think Al Haymon's going to budge on the transparency and all this kind of thing, because Errol Spence is a bigger name in boxing. I have to imagine the numbers he's done over the years have been better. He's fought more high-profile fighters, 147 pounds. His next fight apparently is going to be against Keith Thurman. And even though Keith Thurman doesn't seem to be anywhere near what he used to be, that's still a more high-profile opponent than David Avanesian. So as much as I sympathize with Terence Crawford, he doesn't really hold much power in this situation, unfortunately. And, you know, the boxing industry doesn't tend to like independent fighters. They don't like it. None of the promoters tend to like it. Eddie Hearn seems to be the most accommodating of it, but even he can get a little funny when a fighter wants to go off and have a fight on a different network and then come back to him, except when it's Canelo, right? But when it's other fighters, Eddie Hearn can get a bit funny when fighters do that. We saw that with Kell Brook. We saw it a little bit when Dylan White was talking about fighting on, I know he just fought Tyson Fury on BT and Eddie Hearn was cool with that, but that's the world heavyweight title, right? And obviously Eddie Hearn lost the purse bid for that. But there was a previous time when Dylan White was shopping around and Eddie Hearn was kind of getting funny about it. Had to, like, you know, if Dylan White tried to come back to him in the future after going off and doing something else, maybe he wouldn't work with him. Do you know what I mean? One of them ones. So in general, the industry doesn't like independent fighters. They like fighters who they can milk for a bit, tie down to a contract and all that kind of thing. So yeah, and if you are going to operate independent, you have to take what comes with that. Until you can reach the level of a Canelo or even Miguel Cotto towards the end of his career, Floyd Mayweather, etc. Until you can reach that level where your market value, your commercial value is that high, then you're going to get treated the way Terence Crawford is being treated here. And my biggest concern in this whole situation is the fallout from Terence Crawford coming out and saying this publicly. Now, some people are saying that they think this is all contrived and that Terence Crawford saying what he's saying here is just a way to build the fight up even more because, again, you've got Eddie Hearn saying the fight's not as big as people think it is and potentially Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis is bigger than this fight. That's what Eddie Hearn is claiming. So if that is true, again, some people are speculating that maybe this is just a ruse and that there is no real beef behind the scenes. It's just Terence Crawford, with the approval of Al Haymon, or I don't know, the advice of Al Haymon, going out there and acting like there's this huge beef and this and that and just building the fight up a little more so when they do fight in 2023, they can both get paid more money. You know, so some people think it's as cynical as that. But if it isn't that, and if Terence Crawford really is exposing, quote unquote, what Al Haymon was doing behind the scenes, then this could scupper the fight completely. Laying it all out like this, it could scupper the fight. You know, Al Haymon might say, well, I'm not going to do the fight with this guy after what he's tried to say about me and the way he's tried to make us look. Nah, And if he does come back to us, well, you got to sign long-term contract or there's no deal. Do you know what I mean? I'm concerned that something like that could happen. Hopefully it doesn't. And we do get to see the fight in 2023. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Bud Crawford's video where he's quote unquote exposing Haymon. Who do you think's in the right or wrong? And do you think this may jeopardize the fight? Let me know what you guys think. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Haymon Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high-quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship-free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.